Daily Pink Slip. From a murderer with more than 300 victims to a madman that saved the skulls and body parts of those slain by him, we're counting down 10 of the most evil and psychopathic serial killers of the 20th century. Number 10. Pedro Alonso Lopez. After committing close to 100 murders in Peru, he was turned over to the police, who then let him go. He moved to Ecuador, where he claimed to have murdered 3 to 4 girls per week. He was caught in 1980 and a flash flood revealed 59 of his victims' bodies. This led to Lopez being given the nickname Monster of the Andes. In 1983, he was found guilty of murdering 110 girls and confessed to 240 more. After spending many years in a psychiatric hospital, he was released by the Ecuadorian government in 1998. This man killed more than 300 women, and this freak is still out there somewhere. Number 9. Dr. Gerald Shipman was a practicing physician who liked to kill his patients. He would target elderly women and administer a lethal dose of diamorphine. He would then falsify medical records to indicate that they were in poor health. After a full investigation, he was convicted of murdering 15 women in this fashion, all patients of his. Shipman was given 15 life sentences for his crimes. He most likely caused the death of more than 200 patients, and his wife had no idea. He committed suicide in prison in 2004 and at the time had still not confessed to his murders. Number 8. One of the most disturbing serial killers on our list, Jeffrey Dahmer is also one of the most famous. He wasn't known for the number of murders committed, but rather what he did with the remains afterwards. Dahmer liked to preserve parts of his victims in the freezer for later consumption. He dismembered and otherwise mutilated nearly every person he killed, often saving many of their body parts, especially skulls and skeletal remains. He engaged in necrophilia as well, with special attention given to internal organs. Needless to say, this dude was fucked up on all accounts. In 1992, Dahmer was sentenced to 15 life sentences, one for each of his victims. 2 years later, a fellow inmate, Christopher Scarver, bludgeoned Jeffrey Dahmer to death with a metal pole. Number 7. Ted Bundy is also one of the more famous American serial killers. He used his good looks and charisma to gain the trust of women before he killed them. He would often take his victims to a secluded place to commit the murders. Bundy also had the habit of returning to the body for sexual acts. He decapitated 12 of his victims and kept a few severed heads in his apartment. Though he denied committing any murders for over a decade, he eventually confessed to more than 30 between 1974 and 1978. The actual number of deaths is not known. After receiving 2 death sentences in 3 separate trials, he was fried on the electric chair in 1989. Number 6. One of the ultimate hypocritical murderers of all time is Moses Sithole of South Africa. While managing an organization called Young Against Human Abuse, Sithole would abduct females who were interviewing for a position within the organization. He would take them out to remote fields, beat, rape, and murder them, often strangling them with their own underwear. By 1995, he had claimed over 30 victims. Later that year, he contacted a journalist to identify himself as the killer and boasted a total of 76 victims, twice the reported number. In 1997, he was sentenced to a total of 2,410 years in prison. Sithole is now rotting to death in a shithole. Number 5. Gary Leon Ridgeway was nicknamed the Green River Killer by the press for an obvious reason. His first 5 victims' bodies were found dumped in the Green River. He preferred to strangle his victims, then dump the bodies elsewhere. In 2001, he was arrested for the murders of 4 women with his DNA linking him to the crimes. In all, he was convicted of 49 murders, the most confirmed in all of American history. He confessed to more than double that amount. Ridgeway was sentenced to 48 life sentences without parole and an additional 480 years for tampering with evidence on each of the cases. Number 4. Gerald Stano grew up a compulsive liar, bedwetter, and poor student. He graduated high school at the age of 21 and never attended college. According to Stano's own admission, he murdered for the first time when he was just 18 years old. By the time he was 29, he was in prison for 41 murders, all women. He preferred to strangle and stab those that he killed. There is some controversy as to if he committed every murder he pled guilty to. Regardless, he was able to identify the locations of dead bodies and details of those victims as well. Interestingly, he shared a cell with Ted Bundy, who also appears on our list. Stano was executed by electric chair in 1998, with his last statement being the location of another body. Number 3. As a child, Tommy Lynn Sells was molested by a man with his own mother's consent. He claims that this abuse led to his violent behavior. Homeless for the majority of his life, he traveled across the country from 1978 to 1999, committing murder the whole way. In 1992, he raped, stabbed, and beat a woman with a piano stool. He was sentenced 2 to 10 years in prison, but only served 4 years total. In 1999, he stabbed a 13-year-old girl to death and slit the throat of a 10-year-old girl who survived. The girl was able to describe Sells' identity to a police sketch artist, and he was apprehended. The police believe he murdered roughly 22 people. In 2000, he was given the death penalty. In 2014, he was executed by lethal injection. When asked if he would like to make a final statement, he simply replied, no. Number 2. Richard Ramirez had a short but deadly stint in Southern California. In the mid-'80s, a string of murders in LA and San Francisco led to the media nickname the Night Stalker. Ramirez used handguns, knives, machetes, hammers, and other weapons to commit his violent crimes. He preferred to use a .22 caliber pistol to kill his victims, then mutilate the body afterwards. After spotting his face on a newspaper rack, he fled as quickly as possible, but failed. He was captured and put on trial for the murder of 13 people and received the death sentence. Due to the lengthy appeals process in California, he was on death row for 25 years before he died of lymphoma. Number 1. Andrei Chikatilo followed the common theme of receiving a nickname for his murders. Known as the Butcher of Rostov, the Red Ripper, or the Rostov Ripper, he raped, murdered, and mutilated 52 people between 1978 and 1990, mostly women and children. He would often lure away and abduct people at bus and train stations throughout the 1980s. Chikatilo was known to desecrate the body after committing murder. In 1990, he was arrested for the final time. He confessed to a total of 56 murders, 52 of which he was convicted. Ultimately, Chikatilo was sentenced to death. In 1994, he was taken to a soundproof room and executed by gunshot to the head. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Do us a favor and subscribe to Daily Pink Slip. Click like, share with your friends, hit us up on Facebook and Twitter, and leave comments. New Daily Pink Slip videos just for you guys every single week. Subscribe so you don't miss a video.